The village of Suran lay at the edge of a wide desert, where the wind carried grains of sand into every corner of the houses, and the nights were filled with the songs of distant jackals. Life here was quiet, almost unchanging. People lived by herding goats, drawing water from deep wells, and trading simple goods with travelers who sometimes passed through. Among the people of Suran lived a young man named Aaron. He was known for his endless curiosity, while others were content with the daily rhythm of work. Aaron often asked questions that few could answer. Why did the stars seem to move in certain patterns every season? Why did the dunes shift as though alive, and what lay beyond the endless sea of sand that stretched far into the horizon? Elders of the village usually laughed at his questions. To them, survival was more important than mysteries. But Aaron never stopped wondering. He often sat outside at night, staring at the sky, or climbed the tall stones near the village just to see a little farther than the day before. One evening, as the sky turned orange and the village gathered for supper, the oldest man in Suran, Elder Rowan, began to speak. His voice was thin but steady, and the children always leaned close when he told stories. That night, his tale was about a tomb hidden somewhere in the desert. They say, Elder Rowan began, his eyes reflecting the firelight that long ago, before our fathers and their fathers were born, a great people lived here. They built not only villages, but also halls of stone and places of wonder. When their time ended, they left behind a tomb, a place no map has ever revealed. Some believe it holds their treasures, others say it holds their wisdom. But all who searched for it were lost, and none ever returned. The villagers listened in silence. For most of them, it was only another tale, a story to entertain the young. Yet to Aaron, the words were like sparks falling into dry grass. His heart beat faster, and a thought grew stronger in his mind. If no map revealed this tomb, perhaps the reason was not that it did not exist, but that the tomb was waiting for someone to find it. Later that night, when the fire was reduced to glowing embers, Aaron walked alone toward the edge of the desert. The sands looked endless under the pale moon. He tried to imagine what lay beyond the horizon, what secrets could be hidden beneath the dunes. The idea of a place untouched by time filled him with both fear and excitement. The next morning, Aaron met with Mira, his closest friend. Mira was calm where Aaron was restless, thoughtful where he was impulsive. Yet she often followed him in his curious ventures, for she trusted his heart even if his plans were unclear. Mira, Aaron said, his eyes shining with eagerness, you heard the elder's story last night about the tomb. Do you not wonder if it is real? Mira smiled faintly. I wonder, yes, but many have wondered before us, and they never came back. Perhaps the desert itself guards the secret, or perhaps. Aaron replied quickly, those who searched before did not know where to look. Maybe they did not ask the right questions. What if the tomb does not want to be found by greed, but by those who seek truth? Mira tilted her head, considering his words. She had known Aaron since they were children, and she had seen that when he fixed his mind on something, he could not rest until he followed the path before him. You speak as though the tomb is alive, she said softly. Not alive, Aaron answered, but waiting. And I cannot sit here all my life and never try. Even if the sands are endless, I must see with my own eyes what lies beyond. Mira looked out at the desert. The sun was rising, and the dunes glowed like waves of gold. There was danger, yes, but also wonder. After a long silence, she nodded. If you go, I will go with you. The desert is no place for one alone. Gratefulness filled Aaron's chest. He had expected Mira to refuse, yet she had agreed without hesitation. With her calm wisdom beside his restless curiosity, he felt a strange sense of balance. Together, perhaps, they could succeed where others had failed. That day, Aaron began to prepare. He gathered water skins, dried food, and a small knife for cutting ropes and cloth. Mira brought a strong walking staff, a small bag of herbs, and a piece of cloth marked with her family's symbol to remind her of home. They packed lightly, for the desert punished those who carried too much. As the sun fell, painting the sky in deep red, the two friends stood at the edge of Suran, The village lay quiet behind them, unaware that its history was about to change. Before them stretched the endless desert, vast and mysterious, holding secrets buried in silence. Aaron felt a thrill of both fear and courage. He did not know what awaited them beyond the dunes. He only knew that the elder's story had lit a fire in him that could not be put out. And so, with Mira at his side, he took his first step into the unknown, determined to find what no map had ever revealed. The desert was silent when Aaron and Mira stepped into it. Behind them, the village of Saran grew smaller with every step, until it was nothing more than a faint shape on the horizon. Before them stretched a sea of sand, endless and golden under the rising sun. The air was dry, and the wind carried grains that stung their faces. Aaron felt both excitement and nervousness. He had dreamed of this moment since hearing the elder's story, but dreams often felt brighter than reality. Now, with the desert stretching wider than his eyes could see, he realized how small he and Mira were against such vastness. Yet his heart was firm. He would not turn back. Mira walked beside him quietly. Her steps were steady, her staff firm in her hand. She did not waste words, but her presence gave Aaron strength. When the sun grew hotter, she reminded him to drink small sips of water, not too much at once. When the sand shifted under their feet, she guided him toward firmer ground. Aaron often rushed ahead with eagerness, but Mira's calm balance kept them safe. By midday, the heat was heavy. The sand shimmered like a mirror, and the air seemed to dance with waves of light. The two friends found shelter beneath a rocky ledge where a few hardy plants grew. They shared a piece of dried bread and rested. As they sat, Aaron studied the ground. "Do you see this?" Mira, he asked, pointing to a half-buried stone. It was smooth, not like the rough desert rocks. On its surface were faint lines, almost like carvings. Mira leaned closer. "It looks shaped by hands, not by nature. Perhaps it is old, very old." Her words stirred Aaron's thoughts. Could this be a trace of the forgotten people Elder Rowan had spoken of? If so, they were already closer to the tomb than he dared to hope. When the heat softened in the late afternoon, they continued walking. The dunes rolled like waves, rising and falling, each one hiding what lay beyond. At times, Aaron felt as if the desert itself was testing them, hiding its secrets under endless folds of sand. As the sun lowered, they noticed tall shapes in the distance. At first, Aaron thought they were mirages, tricks of the heat, but as they drew closer, the shapes became clear. They were pillars of stone, half sunken into the desert floor. Some leaned at strange angles, while others stood straight, as though guarding a forgotten path. Aaron's heart raced. These cannot be natural. They must have been placed here long ago. Mira touched one of the stones, brushing away the sand. Faint symbols covered its surface. Though time had worn many away, she could not read them. But their presence was enough. "We are not the first to walk here," she whispered. They set up camp near the stones that night. Aaron lit a small fire, careful to shield it from the wind, while Mira spread a blanket over the sand. The sky turned deep purple, then black, and the stars appeared in thousands. The desert at night was a different world, quiet, vast, and filled with mystery. Aaron lay on his back, staring at the constellations. He remembered the elder's words. Some believe the tomb holds wisdom. Perhaps the stars themselves were a part of that wisdom. The thought filled him with wonder. "Mira," he said softly, "do you think the tomb is real, or is it only a tale meant to keep the young curious?" Mira turned her gaze to the sky. "Every tale holds a seed of truth. The question is not if the tomb is real, but what we will find if we reach it. Gold and treasure may not be what waits for us." Aaron smiled faintly. "Then let it be knowledge. I would rather uncover wisdom than jewels." They fell asleep to the sound of wind moving across the dunes, like a soft song sung by the desert itself. The next day brought another challenge. A sudden sandstorm rose without warning, sweeping across the dunes with fierce power. The air filled with dust, blinding them. Aaron pulled his cloth tightly across his face, and Mira held onto him with one hand while keeping her staff firm with the other. Together they pressed against the wind, seeking shelter. At last, they found a small canyon, its high walls shielding them from the storm. inside. The air was calmer. The stone walls were carved with markings, deeper and clearer than those on the pillars. Aaron ran his hand across the carvings. They were arranged in lines, almost like words on a page. "These must be messages," he whispered. "Maybe left by the people who built the tomb." Mira studied them carefully. Though she could not understand the language, she noticed patterns. Some marks were repeated, others formed circles or arrows. "These are not warnings," she said slowly. "They look more like directions. Perhaps this canyon is part of the path." The storm outside howled like a beast, but inside the canyon, Aaron and Mira felt a new energy. They had found something important, something hidden from the world. The story of the tomb was no longer only words told by an elder. It was real, waiting for them to follow the path deeper into the desert. As night fell and the storm began to fade, Aaron sat near the carvings, his mind full of questions. Who were the people who made this place? What did they wish to leave behind? And why had they hidden it so carefully? The answers were still far away, buried under the sands. But for the first time, Aaron felt certain that he and Mira were walking the right road. The tomb was no longer a dream. It was a destiny waiting to be uncovered. The desert was silent when Aaron and Mira stepped into it. Behind them, the village of Saran grew smaller with every step, until it was nothing more than a faint shape on the horizon. Before them stretched a sea of sand, endless and golden under the rising sun. The air was dry, and the wind carried grains that stung their faces. Aaron felt both excitement and nervousness. He had dreamed of this moment since hearing the elder's story, but dreams often felt brighter than reality. Now, with the desert stretching wider than his eyes could see, he realized how small he and Mira were against such vastness. Yet his heart was firm. He would not turn back. Mira walked beside him quietly. Her steps were steady, her staff firm in her hand. She did not waste words, but her presence gave Aaron strength. When the sun grew hotter, she reminded him to drink small sips of water, not too much at once. When the sand shifted under their feet, she guided him toward firmer ground. Aaron often rushed ahead with eagerness, but Mira's calm balance kept them safe. By midday, the heat was heavy. The sand shimmered like a mirror, and the air seemed to dance with waves of light. The two friends found shelter beneath a rocky ledge where a few hardy plants grew. They shared a piece of dried bread and rested. As they sat, Aaron studied the ground. "Do you see this?" Mira, he asked, pointing to a half-buried stone. It was smooth, not like the rough desert rocks. On its surface were faint lines, almost like carvings. Mira leaned closer. "It looks shaped by hands, not by nature. Perhaps it is old, very old." Her words stirred Aaron's thoughts. Could this be a trace of the forgotten people Elder Rowan had spoken of? If so, they were already closer to the tomb than he dared to hope. When the heat softened in the late afternoon, they continued walking. The dunes rolled like waves, rising and falling, each one hiding what lay beyond. At times, Aaron felt as if the desert itself was testing them, hiding its secrets under endless folds of sand. As the sun lowered, they noticed tall shapes in the distance. At first, Aaron thought they were mirages, tricks of the heat, but as they drew closer, the shapes became clear. They were pillars of stone, half sunken into the desert floor. Some leaned at strange angles, while others stood straight, as though guarding a forgotten path. Aaron's heart raced. These cannot be natural. They must have been placed here long ago. Mira touched one of the stones, brushing away the sand. Faint symbols covered its surface. Though time had worn many away, she could not read them. But their presence was enough. "We are not the first to walk here," she whispered. They set up camp near the stones that night. Aaron lit a small fire, careful to shield it from the wind, while Mira spread a blanket over the sand. The sky turned deep purple, then black, and the stars appeared in thousands. The desert at night was a different world, quiet, vast, and filled with mystery. Aaron lay on his back, staring at the constellations. He remembered the elder's words. Some believe the tomb holds wisdom. Perhaps the stars themselves were part of that wisdom. The thought filled him with wonder. "Mira," he said softly, Do you think the tomb is real, or is it only a tale meant to keep the young curious? Mira turned her gaze to the sky. Every tale holds a seed of truth. The question is not if the tomb is real, but what we will find if we reach it. Gold and treasure may not be what waits for us. Aaron smiled faintly. Then let it be knowledge. I would rather uncover wisdom. Then jewels. They fell asleep to the sound of wind moving across the dunes, like a soft song sung by the desert itself. The next day brought another challenge. A sudden sandstorm rose without warning, sweeping across the dunes with fierce power. The air filled with dust, blinding them. Aaron pulled his cloth tightly across his face, and Mira held onto him with one hand while keeping her staff firm with the other. Together they pressed against the wind, seeking shelter. At last, they found a small canyon, its high walls shielding them from the storm. Inside, the air was calmer. The stone walls were carved with markings, deeper and clearer than those on the pillars. Aaron ran his hand across the carvings. They were arranged in lines, almost like words on a page. These must be messages, he whispered. Maybe left by the people who built the tomb. Mira studied them carefully. Though she could not understand the language, she noticed patterns. Some marks were repeated, others formed circles or arrows. These are not warnings, she said slowly. They look more like directions. Perhaps this canyon is part of the path. The storm outside howled like a beast, but inside the canyon, Aaron and Mira felt a new energy. They had found something important, something hidden from the world. The story of the tomb was no longer only words told by an elder. It was real, waiting for them to follow the path deeper into the desert. As night fell and the storm began to fade, Aaron sat near the carvings, his mind full of questions. Who were the people who made this place? What did they wish to leave behind? And why had they hidden it so carefully? The answers were still far away, buried under the sands. But for the first time, Aaron felt certain that he and Mira were walking the right road. The tomb was no longer a dream. It was a destiny waiting to be uncovered. The crack in the cliff stood before Aaron and Mira like a mouth into the earth. At dawn, when the first light touched the desert, they packed their small belongings and faced it with steady hearts. The air drifting from within was cool, carrying the scent of stone and age. It felt different from the desert air, as though it had not been touched by wind for many lifetimes. Aaron held his torch high, the flame casting long shadows on the rock walls. Mira followed close behind, her staff tapping softly against the stone floor. The passage was narrow at first, forcing them to move in single file. Soon, however, it widened into a hallway carved by careful hands. The walls were smooth, the ceiling high, and strange markings lined the surface like words from a language long forgotten. This is not a cave, Aaron whispered. This was built. Mira nodded. Every line is shaped with purpose. Whoever made this wanted it to last. Their footsteps echoed as they moved deeper. The silence was heavy, as though the air itself was listening. Then, after a long walk, they reached a vast chamber. The room was round, with pillars rising like tall trees around its edge. At the center stood statues. Many statues arranged in a circle. They were shaped like people, yet not quite human. Their arms were longer, their faces more slender, their eyes carved wide and deep. In the glow of the torch, those stone eyes seemed alive, watching every movement. Aaron felt a shiver. They looked like guardians. Mira studied them closely. Each statue held something in its hands: a staff, a bowl, a tablet, or a sword carved from stone. Their poses were still, yet powerful, as though frozen in the act of protecting something. They were meant to keep this place safe, she said softly, not with movement, but with presence, to make all who enter remember they are not alone. As they walked among the statues, the silence deepened. The torchlight flickered across the stone faces, and for a moment Aaron almost believed they were breathing. The chamber felt alive, as if the guardians were not only watching, but judging. At the far side of the chamber stood another doorway, tall and narrow, blocked by a slab of stone. On the slab were more carvings, arranged in circles. Unlike the symbols outside, these were clearer, almost like a puzzle waiting to be solved. Aaron touched the markings, his fingers tracing the grooves. It feels like a lock, but not of iron. A lock of thought. Mira stepped closer. Look carefully. The circles repeat. But some lines are missing. Perhaps the missing lines must be drawn in the air, in the mind. They studied the puzzle for a long time. The guardians stood silently around them, as though waiting to see if they were worthy. At last, Mira noticed a pattern. She pointed to 3 symbols. These appear in order on the canyon wall carvings. If we follow that same order here, perhaps the door will answer. Aaron pressed the symbols in sequence. At first, nothing happened. Then the chamber filled with a deep sound, like a stone drum echoing. The slab shuddered, and slowly, with great weight, it slid aside, revealing another hall beyond. The 2 friends exchanged a glance. They had passed the first test dot as they stepped through. Aaron looked back once more at the statues. The torchlight made their eyes gleam, and for a heartbeat he felt certain one had shifted its gaze. He shook the thought away, yet the feeling stayed with him. The new hallway was narrower, but lined with carvings that told a story. Figures were etched into the walls, tall people building great structures, studying the stars, and holding strange tools. In the final carving, the figures stood around a large doorway, much like the one Aaron and Mira had just passed. Their hands raised in what seemed like blessing or farewell. Mira walked slowly, her hand gliding over the carvings. These people were not only builders, they were thinkers, dreamers. They wanted what they created to be remembered. Aaron felt awe. Perhaps this tomb is not a grave at all. Perhaps it is a memory left for those who come after. At the end of the hallway, they entered another chamber, smaller but no less strange. This one held no statues, but the walls shone faintly, as though dusted with a mineral that reflected light. At the center was a stone platform with steps leading up to it. On the platform rested a single tablet, carved with lines that spiraled outward like the branches of a tree. Aaron lifted it carefully. The stone was smooth, almost warm. The markings seemed alive, as though they shifted slightly under the torchlight. Mira's eyes widened. This is knowledge, a message, perhaps something left behind. Aaron held the tablet close, his heart racing. If this is only the beginning, then what lies deeper must be greater still. They left the chamber with the tablet in hand, stepping carefully. Behind them, the statues in the great hall remained silent, their watchful eyes fixed in eternal duty. That night, when they rested just beyond the guardian chamber, Aaron found himself unable to sleep. The statues haunted his mind, though they had not moved. Their presence had spoken louder than words. They had been built not simply to frighten, but to remind anyone who entered that this place was not to be taken lightly, that what was hidden here was more than treasure. Mira sat awake as well, the torchlight flickering over her thoughtful face. Aaron, she said softly, I think the guardians were not placed to keep people out, but to prepare those who came in, to test their hearts, to see if they carried fear or respect. Aaron nodded slowly. Then we must show respect. If we treat this place as only a hunt for riches, we will fail. But if we honor what it holds, perhaps the path will continue to open for us. The desert had brought them to the hidden doorway, but now the tomb itself had accepted them as travelers. On its path, ahead, greater mysteries waited, and behind, the silent guardians stood as eternal witnesses, watching over the journey that had only just begun. The morning after their meeting with the silent guardians, Aaron and Mira stepped deeper into the tomb. The air grew cooler as the passage sloped downward, and their torchlight cast long shadows that stretched like living things across the walls. The silence was so complete that even the sound of their footsteps seemed loud. After a time, the passage opened into a chamber larger than any they had seen before. Its ceiling arched high above, vanishing into shadow, and the walls were smooth, curving inward like the inside of a great shell. When Aaron spoke softly, his voice bounced back in strange patterns, not as a simple echo, but twisted, as though the walls themselves were answering. Mira, he whispered, testing the sound. Do you hear this? Mira nodded, her eyes wide. It is not only echo. The chamber bends the sound, changes it. Listen. She clapped her hands once. The sharp sound traveled upward and returned as a soft hum, almost like the notes of a forgotten song. The chamber was alive with sound, shaping every whisper, every movement into something new. Aaron looked around, wonder filling him. Perhaps this is part of the path. The builders used sound as a guide. As they stepped further inside, the floor beneath them revealed its mystery. Large tiles covered the ground, each carved with a different symbol: circles, lines, stars, waves, and spirals. Some were worn smooth, while others remained sharp. Mira tested one tile by placing her foot on it. A low tone rang out, soft but clear, echoing across the chamber. She stepped back, and the sound faded. Aaron tried another, and a different note filled the space, higher and brighter. Their voices echoed again, mixing with the tones until the chamber seemed filled with music. "It is like an instrument," Mira said quietly. "The floor is meant to be played." Aaron's eyes shone with excitement. "Then the puzzle is sound. We must walk in the right order to open the way." They tested more tiles, listening carefully to each note. At first, the sounds were random, clashing in noise. But after a time, Mira noticed a pattern. Some tiles produced notes that echoed longer, as though the chamber favored them. "Those must be the right ones," she said. "The chamber is showing us the path through sound." Together, they stepped carefully, tile by tile. Each note joined the last, building a melody that filled the chamber. The echoes bent and carried the tune, weaving it into something both haunting and beautiful. But the path was not simple. Once, Aaron stepped on the wrong tile. The chamber answered with a sharp, broken sound, and the floor beneath him shifted slightly, making him stumble. Mira pulled him back quickly, her eyes steady. "We must listen, not rush," she reminded him. Aaron caught his breath and nodded. "You are right. The chamber is not a trap. It is a test of patience." They tried. Again, slower this time. Step by step, they created a rising song, the chamber amplifying each note until it seemed as though unseen voices were singing with them. The sound guided them across the vast hall, until at last they reached the far side. There, set into the wall, was a doorway unlike any they had seen before. It shimmered faintly in the torchlight, its surface carved with wave-like lines that seemed to move when touched by sound. Mira struck the last tile, letting its deep note rise. The doorway trembled, and slowly, the lines glowed with soft light. With a sound like a sigh, the door slid open, revealing a narrow passage beyond. Aaron stared in awe. "The chamber sings, and the door listens?" Mira smiled faintly. "And only those who hear its song may pass." Before stepping through, they looked back. The chamber now lay quiet, but they could still feel its strange presence. It was not only stone and echoes. It was memory, a piece of knowledge left in the form of sound, waiting for travelers who were patient enough to listen. They moved into the passage, the air cooler still. Their footsteps echoed faintly, reminding them of the chamber they had left behind. The hallway led them downward, spiraling like a staircase carved into the earth. At last, they reached another small chamber. This one was plain, almost empty, except for a pedestal at its center. Upon it rested a small sphere of stone, smooth and dark, covered with faint grooves like ripples on water. Ian lifted it carefully. The moment his hands touched it, a faint hum filled the air, soft but steady. It was the same sound the chamber had shaped when Mira clapped her hands. Mira leaned close. "It remembers the song. The sphere carries the sound of the chamber." Aaron felt a deep thrill. The builders had left behind more than puzzles. They had left instruments of knowledge, things that could carry meaning across time. They packed the sphere carefully, knowing it was important, though its full purpose was still hidden. Then they sat to rest, their minds filled with questions. "Mira," Aaron said, his voice quiet, "every step we take shows us more. These people were not guarding riches, they were guarding wisdom, hidden in puzzles and songs." Mira nodded. "Slowly, and each puzzle teaches us something: patience, respect, listening. They are preparing us, Aaron, preparing us for what lies at the heart of this tomb." The silence around them was no longer heavy. It was alive, filled with unseen voices, with lessons waiting in every stone. They knew now that this journey was more than discovery. It was a path of growth, one that tested not only their courage, but their spirit and deep within. Both Aaron and Mira felt the same truth. The tomb was guiding them forward, step by step, to something far greater than either of them had yet imagined. The narrow passage seemed endless as Aaron and Mira walked on, the sound of their footsteps echoing faintly off the stone walls. The air was cooler now, almost fresh, as though it came from a place untouched by time. Their torches cast small circles of light, pushing back the shadows that pressed close on every side. At last, the passage widened into another chamber, but unlike the dark halls before, this one glowed with its own gentle light. The walls shimmered faintly, as if the stone itself held a memory of the sun. The glow was soft, golden, and it filled the space with warmth. Aaron stopped at the threshold, his eyes wide. Mira, do you see it? The walls are shining. Mira stepped forward slowly, her face calm but her eyes bright with wonder. It is as if the stones carry light within them, not fire, not torchlight, something older. The chamber was vast, with shelves carved directly into the rock. These shelves were filled, not with gold or jewels, but with tablets, scrolls sealed in clay, and strange devices that shimmered faintly in the glow. The air was still and heavy, yet not with dust. It was the stillness of a place preserved with care, waiting for those who would one day arrive. Aaron's heart pounded. This is no tomb, he whispered. It is a library. Mira moved carefully between the shelves, her fingers brushing the edges of stone tablets. The markings were sharp and clear, lines and spirals that told a language unknown to them. She paused at one shelf where a series of scrolls were bound with strips of a metal that had not rusted despite the passing of time. These people did not hide their riches here, she said softly. They hid their knowledge. Perhaps they believed wisdom was the greatest treasure of all. Aaron picked up one of the stone tablets. Heavy in his hands, the grooves on its surface glowed faintly, as if responding to his touch. For a moment, he thought he could almost hear something, a faint hum, a memory of voices carried within the stone. He shivered, not with fear, but with awe. All around them, the shelves reached high, filled with the preserved thoughts of a people long vanished. The chamber was silent, but in that silence, Aaron felt the weight of countless stories, discoveries, and lessons. He turned to Mira. The world outside has forgotten them, but here they are still speaking. Mira nodded. And we are meant to listen. They spent hours exploring, though they dared not take too much. Mira found a set of tablets that seemed to show the movements of stars across the sky, their patterns mapped with care. Aaron discovered scrolls filled with diagrams of strange machines, shapes that suggested ways of harnessing wind, water, and even light. The most surprising were the small devices, resting in boxes of stone. Some were shaped like discs, others like rods, each carved with spirals and symbols. When touched, a few gave off faint vibrations, as though they still carried a hidden energy. Aaron held one carefully, turning it in the light. These are not only tools of learning, they are memory itself, captured in form. Mira smiled faintly. Perhaps they wanted their voices to travel farther than their lives, and so they placed them in stone and light, waiting for those who would come after. For a long time, neither spoke. The chamber filled them with quiet reverence. They knew they were standing not only in a hidden place, but at the heart of something greater. At last, Mira said, Aaron, we cannot carry it all. We must choose carefully. But what we take must be shared, not kept hidden. Knowledge dies when it is locked away, Aaron agreed. He carefully wrapped one of the star maps and the strange device. That hummed softly when held. Mira gathered two scrolls, sealed and untouched. They placed the items into their packs with care, as if carrying fragile pieces of the past. Before leaving, Aaron stood once more in the center of the glowing chamber. He felt as though unseen eyes were watching, not with judgment but with hope. He spoke quietly, almost a vow. We will not let this wisdom be lost again. We will carry it back into the world. The chamber remained silent, yet somehow it felt as though it had heard. As they stepped out, the light of the stones faded behind them, but its memory stayed with them. The passage ahead was darker, but Aaron no longer feared the shadows. He carried Light within himself now, the light of knowledge, the light of discovery. Mira walked beside him, calm and steady as always, but her face carried a quiet glow. "Do you feel it, Aaron?" she asked as they moved on. "Yes," he answered without hesitation. "It is as if we have touched something eternal, and it has changed us." The tomb had revealed itself not as a place of death, but as a vault of memory, a gift from an ancient people to those who would seek it with patience and respect. The guardians had tested their courage, the Chamber of Echoes had tested their patience, and now the library had given them the reward of wisdom. And yet, both Aaron and Mira knew this was not the end. The tomb still had more to show. The path was not yet finished, and the greatest secret still waited in silence, hidden deeper within. But they no longer walked with uncertainty. They walked with purpose, carrying the knowledge of those who came before, determined to share it with the world that had long forgotten. The light of the chamber remained in their hearts, guiding them onward into the last mystery of the tomb that no map had ever revealed. Aaron and Mira walked deeper into the last stretch of the tomb, the flicker of their torches lighting the way. The stone passage felt different now. It was smoother, more deliberate, as if the builders had wanted this path to be the final message. To those who reached it, the walls bore carvings that shimmered faintly, scenes of people raising their hands toward the stars, of rivers flowing into vast seas, of great towers and humble homes side by side. Aaron studied the images as they walked. "These are not only memories," he said softly. "They are promises. They wanted us to see their hopes, not just their lives." Mira ran her hand across one of the carvings. "Yes, they built this place not only to keep their voices safe, but to guide whoever followed after them." At the end of the passage, a tall door stood waiting. It was made of stone so polished it looked like still water. The surface reflected their torchlight in gentle waves. No lock, no seal. Only a single mark in the center circle surrounded by rays, like a sun. Aaron pressed his palm against it. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the door gave a soft sound, like a breath after long silence, and began to slide open. The chamber beyond was unlike any they had seen before. It was not dark, nor filled with shelves. Instead, it was vast and open, its ceiling arched high, painted with a map of the heavens. Thousands of tiny lights shone across the dome. Arranged in constellations, they glimmered faintly, as though the stars themselves had been invited inside. At the center stood a pedestal of stone. Upon it rested a single object, a crystal sphere, no larger than a closed hand. It glowed with soft light, pulsing gently, alive with a rhythm like a heartbeat. Both Aaron and Mira stood in silence, all washing over them, the tomb, the trials. The knowledge all had led to this. Aaron stepped closer, his voice trembling with wonder. This must be the heart of their gift." Mira joined him, her eyes fixed on the glowing sphere. "It is not treasure, nor a weapon. It is something else. Perhaps it holds the memory of their people, or the wisdom of their world." They approached carefully. When Aaron reached out, the sphere did not resist. Instead, it lifted gently from the pedestal, floating above his hands. Light spilled from it, filling the chamber, flowing across the walls and ceiling. The constellations painted on the dome came alive, moving slowly, showing the dance of the stars. Rivers of light traced across the floor, forming images of cities, inventions, discoveries, and faces that spoke in a language neither Aaron nor Mira could fully understand. Yet somehow they felt the meaning in their hearts. It was a gift not of gold or power, but of connection. The sphere carried the collective knowledge, the dreams, and the spirit of an entire people, preserved for whoever would listen. Mira's eyes shone with quiet tears. "They are speaking to us, Aaron, not with words, but with light. They are saying, 'Remember us,' and carry our voice forward." Aaron nodded, his own heart heavy with awe. "And that is what we must do." The sphere settled gently back into his hands, its light softening. It no longer glowed as brightly, but its warmth remained steady, like a living ember. Together, Aaron and Mira left the chamber, carrying the sphere with care. The tomb seemed to guide them now, the walls no longer heavy with silence, but alive with quiet strength. When they finally reached the first entrance, The night sky awaited them, filled with stars that echoed the lights they had just seen within. For a long time, they stood at the threshold, breathing the cool air of the outside world, the ruins. Behind them no longer seemed silent, for they knew the voices within would never truly fade. Mira turned to Aaron. The world must know of this place. The knowledge we found, the voices we heard, it all belongs to more than us. Aaron looked down at the sphere in his hands, then up at the endless sky. Yes, we will not keep it hidden. We will carry it to the world, so that the memory of those who came before will live again in every mind willing to listen. And so they began the long journey back, no longer as simple seekers, but as bearers of a message. The trials of the tomb had tested their courage, their patience, and their respect in return. They had been given not wealth but something far greater, the light of knowledge, a gift to humanity itself. As they walked beneath the stars, both felt the same quiet certainty. The tomb that no map had ever revealed was never meant to remain forgotten. It was waiting, across ages of silence, for someone to bring its message back into the world. Aaron and Mira had answered that call, and now the gift they carried would become part of the future, binding the past and the present together in a chain unbroken by time. The journey through the tomb had ended, but their true journey had only begun, the journey to share the voice of a forgotten people, to awaken hope, and to remind humanity that knowledge, once given, belongs to all. The stars above shone brighter, as if watching, as they carried the gift of the tomb into the waiting world.